in the U.S. House of Representatives. As we look ahead to a very busy 2022, I want to pause for a moment and reflect on the work of our office in 2021. A bit of a progress report, if you will. Last year, I am proud to say that our team was able to return more than $6 million to the Virginians across Virginia's 7th District, meaning that we have returned nearly $11 million since I first took office back in 2019. And what do these numbers actually mean? It means that last year, we worked to help more than 2,300 of our constituents with issues that they had with federal agencies, backlogged benefits or delayed tax refunds. And whether dealing with the IRS, the VA, or the Social Security Administration, I was proud that my team worked hard and around the clock to get answers for our neighbors. If you need assistance, please do not hesitate to reach out to my office, and we will be sure to help you the very best that we can. In 2021, we also responded to more than 81,000 of your emails, calls, and letters, and I appreciate the high level of engagement that we have across our district. I see across our communities on the issues that matter, tremendous engagement and a desire for answers and a desire to provide opinions about these important issues. And I hope tonight's event will be another chance for you all to inform my work on behalf of you and your family. During last month's telephone town hall, we spoke about the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which had recently been signed into law. And this month, we're already seeing the results. A couple weeks ago, I announced a major award for Virginia bridge repair and construction. Thanks to this legislation, the U.S. Department of Transportation awarded $107 million for Virginia's bridges over the next year alone, and more than $536 million over the next 5 years. This award is good news for our workforce and for our economy. In the months to come, I will be working to make sure this funding can fix the more than 570 bridges in need of repair, reduce congestion, and keep our roads safe. I was proud to be one of the bipartisan infrastructure law's strongest supporters in Congress, and I'm even prouder to see this funding now starting to deliver real results in Virginia. Tonight, I hope we can touch on many of the issues impacting our region: rising prescription drug costs, access to addiction treatment and recovery services, and the needs of Virginia's local law enforcement and first responders, not to mention our ongoing economic recovery as we rebuild from the COVID-19 pandemic. It is my honor to serve you in Congress. I thank you for joining tonight's conversation, and I look forward to taking your questions.
All right, for everyone that's joined us on this call, as a quick reminder, if you would like to ask a question, all you need to do is press *3 on your telephone keypad to enter the question queue. Again, please press *3 if you would like to ask a question live on this call. Also, as another reminder on this interactive nature of this particular phone call, if you would like to join the Congresswoman's e-newsletter, all you need to do is press *6 right now, and someone will take your email address and get you on the Congresswoman's e-newsletter list. Again, that is *6 to join the Congresswoman's e-newsletter list, and *3 to ask a question. And we've already got a number of folks with questions lined up, so let's get to them. We've got Margaret in Chesterfield joining us live on the line. Margaret, welcome to the call. Go ahead with your question, please.
Yes, Abigail, or Representative Spanberger. It's not necessarily just a Virginia question. I think it is a national question. The problem on our border and the fact that we do not have any secure borders and that we have people from all of these countries streaming into the United States unvetted with COVID, with any other malady that they may have, and why is Congress not doing anything to protect our sovereignty?
Well, Margaret, thank you very much for that question. I appreciate you being in touch and asking about our border security and what Congress is doing. First and foremost, I am proud of the fact that last Congress, under President Trump, I actually led a piece of legislation that was signed into law by former President Trump. I led that legislation with a Republican from Texas, former Congressman Will Hurd, focused on ensuring that we are doing all that we can do to inform our law enforcement and our our government about the challenges creating root causes for immigration throughout Central America, specifically leveraging our collection of intelligence related to human traffickers and narco traffickers so that we can get at the root causes of some of the migration that we have seen towards the United States. That legislation was signed into law by the former president, and I'm proud of that piece of legislation. Notably, another important component is that we, the United States of America, we have an absolute right to know who is entering our country and what might be entering our country. And certainly, as a former law enforcement officer, I am very much in favor of ensuring appropriate funding and resources in terms of detection device, in terms of infrastructure, sensors, and equipment that our law enforcement personnel along the border can use to detect any efforts at entering the country with illegal substances or trafficking of any kind. Notably, our Congress, we have passed appropriations bills. We are waiting for the Senate to take action to pass those appropriations bills to fully fund, all aspects of the government, but including our border security infrastructure. And separately, I've been working with Senate counterparts to ensure and to draft up legislation that would further provide additional support to our border agents along the border to ensure that they have the resources necessary to do the job of engaging with individuals who want to come to this country, who want to come to our country, and doing that important work. Notably, the House has also passed immigration-related bills. I would remark that one that's incredibly important that I hope will have a vote in the Senate is the Farm Workforce Modernization Act. And this is a bill that's really responsive to the larger needs of our economy and to the larger needs of our communities. The bill would provide for more visas for individuals who are going to come to the United States to work in the agricultural sector. And this bill is incredibly popular and supported by many agricultural organizations because farmers and producers, certainly across many parts of Virginia and across many parts of the country, want to be able to hire the support and the workforce that they need on their farms and in their greenhouses, and they want to be able to do so legally. They want to ensure that the person who's coming to work for them also has the protections that come with legal status in the United States. So this is a bill that passed with a significant bipartisan support because it really does get at the heart of one of the challenges we're facing as it relates to immigration, which is there are not enough visas for the individuals who are needed within our workforce. So this bill did pass with significant bipartisan support. It also includes provisions where those who are sponsoring workers to come to the United States would have to go through the E-Verify program so that, again, we as a country would know who's entering the country, that they do go through the appropriate vetting, but that they also have the ability to enter the country with a visa, travel back home, and come back and continue their work, again, legally year after year. It's an important piece of legislation and one that I continue to advocate for because it does recognize the fact that our country has a tremendous need for additional workers, particularly in certain sectors, and we don't have enough visas to meet that need. It's a challenge for the individuals who want to come and do the important work of harvesting fruits and vegetables and working on farms throughout Virginia and the rest of the country. And it's also important for the farmers and producers who want to hire hardworking people who want to support the agricultural industry across Virginia and the country. So I thank you for this question. And certainly Congress is doing a variety of things, working on bills across a variety of sectors, be it border security, visa related, and certainly larger questions of the economy and how that relates to immigration. Thank you for the question, Margaret.
So next up, we've got Lloyd joining us on the line. Lloyd, welcome to the call. Go ahead with your question for Congresswoman Spanberger.
Yes, broadband in the 7th District. We need broadband desperately. Everything in the world now is organized across the internet. I'm a computer scientist, and I could get work if I could have broadband internet so I could get some speed. But it's hard for a 71-year-old man to get a job nowadays.
Lloyd, thank you so much for this question. Certainly, broadband has been a focus of mine since I first entered Congress. And notably, I worked to lead additional funding to the Reconnect program. I worked in the early days of the pandemic to ensure that our pandemic response programs included not just funding for the E-rate program and other broadband and internet-related programs, but also that it expanded that funding and expanded the versatility and the flexibility of those programs. Certainly through the American Rescue Plan, we delivered tremendous resources to our localities and across the 10 counties that I represent, many of those counties that have had real challenges that were not connected to broadband when I first came into office, or that have had real challenges bringing broadband to the communities, have leveraged those substantial American Rescue Plan dollars. Again, federal support I was proud to vote for as part of the VADI program, which under the prior gubernatorial administration, under the Northam administration, they were able to leverage the VADI program from just a few $1 million to hundreds of millions of dollars and propel the Commonwealth on a much faster trajectory towards universal broadband connectivity. Certainly, we are now on pace. Estimates are to have universal broadband connectivity across Virginia, if we keep with the pace set by the prior administration, by 2024. Certainly, I was present at an event where we announced all of the new projects happening, at least in the region that I represent, projects that would impact Powhatan, projects that would impact Goochland, projects that would impact Louisa. And it's exciting, some of the progress that we've made. Not to end with the American Rescue Plan, within the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, we had additional funding for broadband connectivity because, frankly, as you mentioned, Lloyd, it is such a vital component. It's a vital component of the economy. It's a vital component of our educational system. And we were really, as a nation, approaching a point where communities that did not have and do not have broadband connectivity would be left behind. And so what I'm particularly proud of with the infrastructure bill is that this is really the first time that the federal government is recognizing that broadband is a utility, like the electrical grids that we invest in that bill, like the water systems, like the roads, like the bridges. Broadband is a utility that is vital to the functioning of our nation and worthy of federal investment. So, Lloyd, I look forward to making progress, further progress across Virginia's 7th district, so that you will have broadband at your home. But we are on our way. We're making tremendous progress, but there is still yet more to be done. Thank you.
So our next question comes from Betty, who's on the line live with us. Betty, welcome. What is your question?
Thank you very much, Abigail Spanberger, for your service to our district. My question is in regards to the Postal Service. Twice in the last 2 weeks, we have not even received Postal Service. I get informed delivery every day, and I'm shown what pieces of mail should be coming to my home. They don't come. During this time of the year, especially since we're getting a lot of things for taxes, I'm very concerned about that. What can Congress do to get our mail back to a regular system like it was a few years ago? Thank you.
Betty, if you're still on the line, what county do you live in?
Chesterfield.
Thank you. So, Betty, and for anyone else listening, we have had challenges with the Postal Service, certainly in the early days of COVID, and ever since. There have been challenges that we face with the Postal Service, and the impact is significant. Betty mentioned some of the challenges she's facing, concerns related to taxation paperwork, but truly many people across our district receive prescription drugs, particularly our veterans receive prescription drugs through the mail, and these delays can really have significant consequence. So in terms of what Congress can do, the most immediate of actions that we can take is actually on the constituent service side of the House. Certainly, while I am supportive of various different pieces of legislation to strengthen the Postal Service and potentially look towards a successful and important future for the Postal Service, when it comes to the specific challenges that come region to region or area to area, the way that we can have the most impact is through inquiries through constituent services. So, Betty, I'll make sure that my team follows up with you directly. And for anyone else who's listening who has consistent challenges that they're experiencing with the Postal Service, it would be important that you make our office aware so that we can follow up on those specific issues. And the number is 804-401-4110. Thank you.
All right, as another reminder, if you'd like to receive updates from the Congresswoman's office via email, please press *6 now on your phone keypad or at any time during this call, and an operator will collect your email address and add you to the e-newsletter list. Again, please press *6 in order to join the Congresswoman's e-newsletter list and stay up to date with what's happening. So let's see here. It looks like we've got a question from Deborah that was submitted online. And Deborah asks, when will Medicare be able to negotiate with drug companies to lower drug prices? I can't afford a blood thinner because it will put me into the no coverage gap of Medicare Part D.
Deborah, thank you for this question. You may or may not be aware that well before I even got to Congress, I have been advocating for Medicare to be able to negotiate the cost of prescription drugs. And for anyone who's listening or watching, I think it's important for you to note that Medicare is currently prohibited by law from negotiating the cost of its prescription drugs. So we look at another entity, the VA. The VA is able to negotiate the cost of prescription drugs that it utilizes and prescribes to its patients, but yet Medicare Part D is not able to do the same. The important part here is that without negotiation, we know that American seniors pay as much as 10 times as much as what seniors pay in other countries. And so in a country like the United States of America, where we focus on the competition of our capitalist economy, it is outrageous to me that Medicare cannot negotiate, legally prohibited from negotiating the cost of prescription drugs. So I think that I'm in significant agreement with Deborah about the problem. And so now let me talk about what it is that we're doing about it. So there's a bill that I have co-sponsored and advocated for and voted for, and that is a bill called HR 3. It's the Lower Prescription Drug Costs Now Act. This bill would give Medicare the ability to negotiate the cost of prescription drugs, and it would impact others because it would allow private insurers to then also use those negotiated rates. This is incredibly important. It would, through those negotiations, allow for us to put downward pressure on prices and lower those prices that are paid by seniors and people who use private insurers. So that's the first thing that we've done. We've passed it in the House. It did receive bipartisan support. But unfortunately, it has not yet received a vote in the Senate, and it's not anticipated that it will in the near term. So as a second step, there's another bill, and many of you might have heard about a larger bill that was being called the Build Back Better Act. Well, that bill has a component of it. What passed out of the House has a component that would allow for Medicare to negotiate not all drugs, but a significant portion of the most expensive drugs. Which is incredibly important, again, that price negotiation. It also would ensure an out-of-pocket cap of $2,000 per year. So when I hear from constituents that they're in the donut hole, that they can't afford their out-of-pocket expenses, the fact that we could cap out-of-pocket expenses for Medicare patients is incredibly important. The other thing that this bill would do is cap insulin at the cost of $35 per month for those on Medicare and anyone else. The important thing here is that I have heard directly from constituents in our district where a parent and a child both have diabetes, they both need insulin, and the parents are literally determining and structuring how they purchase the life-saving insulin that they need because of the significant costs that they have to carry to keep both the parent and the child healthy. So this is another bill that we passed through the House, and we are looking for it to get a vote in the Senate. Negotiations are still ongoing with our Senate partners, and I remain hopeful that this cost saving, and I would note that cost saving, these Medicare negotiation pieces of legislation, be it H.R. 3 or the component within the Build Back Better Act, save the federal government millions of dollars. And allowing for the savings from those drug price negotiations to be utilized to improve Medicare coverage is an important part. In H.R. 3, the first bill that I mentioned, we actually reinvest those savings in expanding for hearing coverage to ensure that seniors, as they might need access to healthcare related to hearing loss and any devices associated with hearing loss, that they have that covered. And this is important. It's important from a mental health standpoint. It's important from an isolation standpoint. But at the end of the day, it's lowering the cost of prescription drugs, not just for those who use Medicare, but also those who use commercial insurance. So those are two pieces of legislation. The House has passed both. One has a greater chance in the Senate, but we're still working on it. I'm sorry we haven't delivered it yet, Deborah, but I'm going to continue working for this. I've written op-eds with a number of my other counterparts, really highlighting the unbelievable importance of just allowing Medicare to negotiate its prescription drugs. So thank you for asking this question.
So it is absolutely wonderful to see so many people involved in tonight's live telephone town hall with Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger. If you're on the line with us and you've got a question you'd like to ask, please press star 3 on your telephone keypad to enter the question queue. Again, if you've got a question you'd like to ask live on this call, please press star 3 now on your telephone keypad, or enter your name and question right below the streaming player. Back to the phone we go. We've got Rory joining us live on the line. Rory, welcome to the call. Go ahead with your question.
Hi there, and Congresswoman Spanberger, we spoke before regarding, I have two questions, and one is on the supply chain czar and your initiative, which showed a lot of strength to take that forward, and I hope you're still plugging away at it, because everybody on the call, everybody in the country is struggling, obviously, with inflation and the supply chain. So I wonder how that's going, number one. And number two in the question would be regarding local government. For example, County of Orange. I recently read, those of us that work and do volunteer work with different cities in the district, I read that $66 billion in grants are left on the table that cities for public safety and other measures can be received. But there are so many different grant application processes. Is there a one-point contact or a clearinghouse that cities and locales and local government can go to try to help garner some of those funds? So that's one question. And the other is your progress on the supply chain czar. And then I'm just going to end by saying the following. I appreciate your determination and toughness regarding what you're doing on trading equities among members of Congress. I think that initiative is terrific, takes a lot of guts, and I'm glad that you're running again. I don't know, you never met you personally, but I will tell you, if there is a term, and a Democrat could be a demo pragmatist, you certainly represent that, and kudos to you. And I hope everybody realizes your moderate views and the follow-up you do, and I hope they support you widely and in every way for your election in 2022. So again, the czar question, and then a point of contact or something for grants to help cities and public safety.
Don't worry, Rory. I'm a note taker. I got them all down. Thank you for your kind words. So I'm gonna go supply chain, trading equities, and then the billions on the table. So I did call for there to be a supply chain czar put in place for those who have ever been to a grocery store, and I certainly don't mean to make light, but if you have gone to the grocery store in the past 6 months, you know there are supply chain issues. Everyone is impacted. We are impacted by increased prices. We are impacted by the lack of availability. And it's everything from chicken to peanut butter and everything in between that's impacted. And so, the pinch that we are all feeling because of inflation is significant. And I have called on the administration to put a supply chain czar in place. They have not yet done it, but I continue to advocate for this in committee hearings and also in my communication with the administration, because frankly, there's a variety of different parts of the federal government that are kind of at play: Department of Transportation, Department of Commerce, Department of Energy in some cases, and Small Business Administration. And so making sure that anyone and any department that might be impacted or part of USDA, frankly, actually, when we're talking a lot related to local producers and the food supply chain, making sure that everyone who has a part in supply chain, in a supply chain that functions or a supply chain that is challenged, is brought together under the auspices of a supply chain czar. This is a major priority for me. It hasn't yet been achieved. I'm going to continue to be a squeaky wheel on this because I do think that consolidation of kind of an effort, an oversight over the effort is important. Notably, USDA, though, has taken a step which I really appreciate, which is I have a piece of legislation called the Butcher Block Act. It's a piece of legislation I sponsored with a Republican from South Dakota, Dusty Johnson. And this is a piece of legislation really focused on ensuring a ease of supply chain for our livestock producers. And in fact, I actually brought the Undersecretary for Rural Development out to Orange County to sit down with cattlemen from the Virginia Cattlemen's Association, and we walked through a local processing facility where they process the cows right on site, and talked about the importance of having a less consolidated supply chain and processing supply chain, and notably local engagement. And what USDA has done is they have effectively put in, just through their rulemaking and through USDA, they have basically put into effect what Congressman Johnson and I were calling for in this bill. So, individually, we see positive steps in the right direction, and I'm certainly pleased by what USDA has done. The second issue related to trading equities. So Rory mentioned this. I have a bill that I introduced back in 2020. Many of you probably remember back in 2020, there were all these reports in the early days of the pandemic that members of Congress or senators were buying this stock or selling that stock. And there were reports after reports that while the rest of us, and I include myself in that, the rest of us were trying desperately to get masks or, Cloroxing our groceries or worried about this new virus. And members of Congress, myself included, we were going to briefings. We were learning what was happening. We were getting, in some cases, classified information about what we knew coming out of the early places where the pandemic was hitting, China, Italy, etc. We had members of Congress and the Senate who were buying stocks. And I remember at the time being horrified and disgusted by these reports because, I don't know about them, but I was focused on serving our constituents whose jobs were shutting down, who were terrified, who were confused, who were calling our office nonstop with real worries that we were trying to adapt to and adjust to. So I have a colleague from Texas, a Republican by the name of Chip Roy, who we were talking about this. And Chip and I do not agree on a lot, but we certainly agree on the fact that it's outrageous that members of Congress would be able to buy and trade individual stocks pretty much any time, but certainly during a pandemic. And so in 2020, we wrote a bill that said, let's make it really easy. If you have stocks and you're elected to Congress, you got to put them in a blind trust or you sell them. You can have mutual funds, you can save for your retirement, but individual stocks where you can own, X amount of dollars in Facebook or X amount of dollars in Pfizer or Clorox or anything, the same companies that might be coming before your committee, you should not be able to own those individual stocks. So either sell them or put it all in a blind trust. And it's a pretty straightforward piece of legislation. And it also applies to your spouse and your dependent children, because the actions that our spouses take with the information that we have access to is just as abhorrent and offensive to me as the potential that there could be any constituent out there who thinks that members of Congress are focused on self-dealing. And so for me, the real issue here, as I've had some colleagues say, oh, but I'm not doing anything wrong. I said, what matters is that our constituents think. that people are doing something wrong. What matters is that we have the opportunity to affirmatively tell the American people that we are trustworthy, that we are working on your behalf, and that we are interested in serving you, not our stock portfolio. And the way that we do that is to say we either have a blind trust or we don't have a stock portfolio. And so I'm particularly adamant about this piece of legislation. We have gotten a tremendous amount of support for it. We're still working. We're not at a vote yet. But it really has brought together a pretty broad coalition. We've got people from the far left, people from the far right, people from all parts of the country, people who've been in Congress many years, people who just got here. And I'm going to continue working to grow that coalition because it's our chance, our opportunity to affirm to the American people that we're trustworthy and that we are putting their interests first and not the interests of our stock portfolio. And Rory's last question about all of the grant dollars. So there's a couple things here. There is not one consolidated person you can go to at the national level. And this, for me, was a real big issue. So in my office, we have one person. We may not have it at the national scale, but we have a gentleman based in our Henrico office whose job it is, whose title is to be our grants manager. And so he has been in touch with so many of our community leaders, nonprofit organizations, county administrators, town council members, to town mayors to make sure that they are aware of what exists in terms of grants. If they have questions about grants, he can answer them. If they want a letter of support for a federal grant, we can answer them. And so for anybody who might want to write this down, the email for that is spanberger.grants@mail.house.gov. It's spanberger.grants@mail.house.gov. You can also call our office and we'll be sure to put you in touch with Sean, who is our grants manager. And we hope that he can be helpful to you as you're trying to navigate the process. One more thing, because it's related to this, there are a lot of tremendous grants that are so helpful, particularly in the public safety space. And one of them is the COPS grant, which provides federal support to localities that want to use these federal grant dollars for training, recruitment, vetting of their sheriff's deputies or their police officers. And the program was put in place back in 1994, and it provides tremendous support. In fact, some of the localities that I represent have received, either recently or in the recent past, grants through the COPS program. It is a program that does not have nearly enough funding for the amount of interest and the need on the ground. And so I sponsored a piece of legislation, just introduced a piece of legislation with a colleague, Congressman Rice from South Carolina, a Republican from South Carolina, that would triple the funding to this program and also make it so that it is easier for smaller localities. So these are, your towns or rural sheriff's departments, your smaller localities, smaller size departments to be competitive in those grant programs. So not only do we have somebody in the office who's focused on helping the people of the 7th apply for those federal grants, but when we hear feedback from some of those applicants about challenges that they're facing applying for some of these grants or receiving a successful grant, that we respond to that by writing the legislation that makes sure that particularly useful and valuable grant dollars are able to flow to the people, the localities, and the nonprofits or local governments that need them the most. So thank you, Rory. I think I got all your questions. Back to you, Dirk.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman. And if you're on the line with us and you've got a question you'd like to ask Congresswoman Spanberger, now's the time to press *3 on your telephone keypad. Again, if you'd like to ask a question live on this call, please press *3 right now on your telephone keypad. If you're watching this online, you can go ahead and enter your name and question right below the streaming player. And we're going back to a question on the phone. We've got Jeanette joining us live. Welcome to the call. Go ahead with your question, please.
Yes. How you doing, Miss Abigail Spanberger?
Hi, Jeanette.
Nice to talk with you.
You too.
I was just wondering about the child tax credit that they were giving back during the pandemic, and like tax time now. Some people are saying that was a loan. Is that true or not?
No, ma'am, it was not a loan. And if just a kind of a little bit of an explainer on the child tax credit. So the child tax credit has been in existence for years as a credit against the taxes that you pay. So come tax time, you would claim a child, receive the tax credit, and it was part of your tax filing. For the 2021 tax year, so that's the calendar year 2021, we increased the amount of the tax credit and we made it refundable. And in making it refundable, it was you don't have to wait for tax time to receive those dollars. And the dollars are yours, the tax credit is yours, regardless of how it plays off your actual income. And what we did was in making it refundable, we had 6 months of those dollars actually came out monthly, starting July through December. So you would have received that if you received the child tax credit, July through December, each of those 6 months. And then when you file taxes in April, you'll actually receive the child tax credit for the part of January through June of 2021. So most people will then be receiving additional funds for that January through June portion of the year. But it is not a loan. It is money that people are getting because the child tax credit was made refundable this year, as opposed to just a credit against the taxes, the earnings you had and the taxes that you pay. And if anyone has any additional questions about that, I welcome you to reach out to our office and we'll make sure that you have any additional resources you may need to kind of understand the way that tax credit works, again, this tax year, 2021.
So, Congresswoman, we've got a question that was submitted by James online. And James states, companies like Facebook, Google, and many more continue to expand their use of our personal data for their purposes and sell that data broadly. And so with increasing frequency of breaches, what's being done to protect us?
So there's a couple different answers to protecting our data. One, I have a bill called the Cybercrimes Metrics or Better Cybercrimes Metrics Act, which is a piece of legislation that I've introduced focused on ensuring that we can actually track cybercrimes, which is not exactly what you were asking about, James, but in the places where we have cybercrimes against individuals, against companies, where your information might be stolen and used incorrectly, ensuring that we can better track those crimes then allow us to actually find or allow our law enforcement professionals to be able to better investigate those crimes and ultimately understand how we can work to make people safer from that sort of criminal behavior. Now, speaking specifically about the companies that take your personal information and then sell it and exploit it, there are a couple other pieces of legislation led by some of my colleagues that would require and put in place reforms to the way social media companies can utilize data. And I am a co-sponsor of a couple different bills in this space. But currently, Congress continues to do on the Oversight Committee oversight of the way these companies work, of how they use data. And there are pieces of legislation that are currently at the committee stage that are aimed at basically stopping or reducing what it is that you're talking about, which is utilizing information that these companies can get based on our use of their platforms beyond some of the basic user information that we provide when we sign up. So there's nothing that is moving towards the floor just yet for a vote, but legislation that's working its way through committee.
So there's an easy way to stay up to date with what the Congresswoman is working on, and that's by joining her e-newsletter. And you can do that right now by pressing *6 on your telephone keypad. Again, if you wish to join the Congresswoman's e-newsletter, please press *6 on your telephone keypad right now. An operator will collect your email address. Let's go back to the phones right now, and we're joined by Bashan. Bastian, welcome to the call. Go ahead with your question, please.
Hi. I know you spoke about the drug use, the rehab for people, but my question is, there are so many people, men and women, who are going into the penal system because of their drug use and because they cannot get the help that they need. So when they come out, they pretty much become the part of the revolving door to that system. And I was wondering, how much help are they able to get? Where are the places that they can go? How can they get this information? I'm a registered nurse. I've worked in the prison. I've worked in every area that you can think of. And it's hard to find information and places to send these people so they can get the help they need so they don't go back in the system.
Well, Basham, thank you. Well, Basham, I want to thank you very much, first off, for your work, certainly as a nurse, certainly working just in any capacity, but particularly within the criminal justice system. And this is actually an area where I have been very focused recently. I have long been focused since I first got to Congress, which I guess wasn't that long ago, focused on issues related to substance use disorder and ensuring that there are proper resources for those who are going through treatment and those who are in their recovery. It's interesting that you asked this question because actually just today I was in Culpeper and Spotsylvania counties visiting facilities that are helping people. One was an inpatient facility to help individuals through a 28-day detox from their substance use disorder. Another location, the C facility, is just an extraordinary place in Culpeper County where people can walk in, they can do group and peer engagement. There's gatherings, there's events, there's yoga, there's NA, there's AA programs that happen right there on the spot. And so these resources, exist kind of unique to community to community. In Spotsylvania, I learned about a program that exists that does help for returning citizens as they are leaving the local jail, helps to ensure that they're going through programs to get certifications that will help them get jobs within the community, that will help ensure that whatever kind of helped or attributed to their path towards incarceration, be it some of their choices, be it their substance use disorder, that they are able to get the support that they need so that they can continue in their path as returning citizens and not go back to jail, not have another run-in with the law. And certainly we do know that the transition from prison or jail back into a community is a particularly difficult one for any offender or any returning citizen who has an issue with drug use. Certainly we know that overdoses are highest right when individuals are first released from prison. One found that the risk of death in the 2 weeks after release was like 12.7 times greater for that of other residents, because when they first leave jail, that risk factor is so significant. It also means that leaving jail is oftentimes a disruption in the services that they're receiving. And so really the federal government can and should do more during this time. One of the things that's incredibly important that I'm advocating for, that I support, is to allow people to access Medicaid for incarcerated individuals. So I am supportive of a piece of legislation, a co-sponsor of a piece of legislation that would allow people to sign up for Medicaid their last 30 days of their incarceration or of their time in jail, which means they can fill out the paperwork when they're in jail. It means that they can start to prepare for the resources that they will have access to and that they will utilize when they are back in the community. And it means that what the day they walk out of that jail, they know how they can continue their recovery, how they can continue to avoid substance use, because they will have the support, and be it medical, be it peer-to-peer counselor, they'll have that. Ultimately, there's really no dedicated funding stream. So one of those is the healthcare provisions through Medicaid. Another challenge is there's no dedicated funding stream for individuals who are in recovery for those support services. And the fact that there's no dedicated funding stream really means that when we're responding to the challenges that people face within recovery, it's underfunded and it can be choppy. So I am leading a piece of legislation that's called the Support Recovery from Addiction Act, which would actually create a 10% set aside from the Substance Abuse Block Grant Program. And the Substance Abuse Block Grant Program is a federal grant program that community programs and CSBs and faith-based organizations, all of these organizations and entities that are helping people through their recovery, that they can apply for federal grants. And much of the money goes to prevention or education or treatment at that moment when someone's sort of in acute crisis. But what often gets sort of left behind is that long-term investment in recovery. So this bill would say that this set aside it's 10% of the substance abuse block grant dollars has to be used for recovery. And so whether it is someone who has been in the criminal justice system or not, ensuring that whatever community support they use, whatever community organization they seek their recovery with, that those funds exist not just in that moment when they need immediate treatment, not just when we're trying to prevent the addiction, but indeed when that individual is focused on their long-term recovery, ensuring that those funds are there. And that's a really important piece of legislation to ensure a funding stream for recovery schools, recovery homes, recovery ministries, including those that work with local and state criminal justice reform efforts. So I'm doing work on this space. I'm also in the kind of final stages of working on a piece of legislation related to jail diversion efforts, particularly for those who are experiencing substance use disorders or mental health challenges. But we're still working on that legislation and look forward to introducing it in the coming months. So thank you for this question, and certainly thank you for your work. And I'm just really proud that there is a lot of good work happening across our community in this space, and certainly was glad to visit 3 such locations just today.
So joining us next on the line, we've got Lee. Lee, welcome to the call. You're live with Congresswoman Spanberger. What's your question?
Hi, Congresswoman Spanberger. This is Lee, and I'm from Chesterfield County. I have 2 sons. Well, actually, one is my son and one is my son-in-law. They're both police officers in the Commonwealth. And last year we had 346 shootings of police officers. And every time they go to work, I have to worry that either one of them are going to come home. My son-in-law has 2 young children, and they both entered the police force of their own volition to serve the community. They are both very good Christian young men, and they chose to be in this field. They went to college. They worked hard. They were both top of their class in college, and they got degrees in Homeland Security, so they could have worked anywhere. But they chose to work in this field because they care about the places that they live in. And they are not out there to be anything more than a help to their community. And every day they have to worry about someone harming them and dragging them into an ambush because of what's going on in this country and this defund police movement that's going on. I'd like to know how you plan on handling this, and with the situation in Virginia that happened in the last several years with allowing criminals that were on life sentences with parole and early releases and things like that were going on, of violent criminals that were put in jail for killing police officers in this country, and they've been allowed to be released from jail. I'd like to know what your stand is on this situation.
Well, Lee, thank you very much for this question and for the service of your son and your son-in-law. I was a former law enforcement officer for a short time in my career, but certainly an impactful number of years when I worked money laundering and narcotics cases. I'm the daughter of a career law enforcement officer and come from a law enforcement family. So I'm grateful for the work of your son and your son-in-law. And I think that the men that you described, men who want to serve the communities in which they live, who want to make their community better, who want to protect, to serve. That is exactly what everyone should expect of every police officer, and that's what we should expect of community policing. It is meant to truly ensure that people like your son and your son-in-law are serving, are protecting, and are devoting their time and their service to their community to protect everyone, to keep us safe. And I am really, truly grateful for the work of the police throughout the 10 counties and the sheriff's deputies throughout the 10 counties that I represent. They do extraordinary work. And certainly, I fully and completely have been very clear in the past, but I'm happy to take the moment to state it again. I do not support defunding the police to any degree. Unequivocally, I do not support defunding the police. And in fact, I support additional funding to police. I voted for the American Rescue Plan, which is a piece of legislation that provided tremendous financial support directly to our localities, directly to school districts, which were so incredibly helpful for our schools to be able to put in place mitigation strategies to help open our schools safely for all children. But it also delivered millions upon millions of dollars of federal support to our localities for them to really be able to ensure on-the-ground needs are met. And some localities have used that to fund police, have used those funds to fund police. And the flexibility we provided with that bill is important. But I mentioned a bill a little bit ago, and I'll address it again. There's a program called the Community Oriented Policing, COPS. And so it's a COPS grant program that provides funding to localities to support their training, their vetting, their salaries, so that police departments, large and small, and sheriff's departments, large and small, can recruit, can train, can vet, can ensure, can retain, and can ensure that they have the very best of the best serving their communities. And this program is constantly underfunded compared to the demand and the need for support. Certainly just a couple months back, the Biden administration announced tens of millions of dollars in COPS grant funding that would be going out. Many localities within Virginia received funding as well. But certainly my bill, a bipartisan bill with a colleague, Congressman Rice from South Carolina, would triple the funding to that program and reauthorize it for 10 years into the future. And the reason that I think this bill is so important is I have heard from law enforcement officers, from our sheriffs, from police chiefs, about the challenges that they have faced throughout the pandemic. We are at a place and a point in time where we have law enforcement officers responding to an unprecedented number of overdoses, of crises. Just even a couple weeks back, some of the counties that I represent that were particularly impacted by the storms, their sheriff's department was out responding to downed trees with more than 500 calls in a 24-hour period. Only one of them was resulted in something that was related to an actual criminal issue. Because when you need something, when something is wrong, people call the police and they respond. And so this is why I'm so supportive of the COPS grant program. This is why I think the funding is incredibly important. And it's informed by the conversations that I have had directly with police chiefs, police officers, sheriff's deputies, and the sheriffs across the 10 counties that I represent. And I recognize, certainly, I recognize that the worry isn't just with the police officers of the challenges that they're facing every day. It's also with the family members, with the mothers-in-law, and I'm grateful for this question, and I'm appreciative of the opportunity to be able to say thank you for your family service, and certainly thank you to your son and your son-in-law. And I do hope that as we continue to move this piece of legislation forward, it recognizes the good service of community-oriented, community-focused police officers like those in your family. So thank you for the question.
So just a quick look at the clock. Looks like we have time for just one more call in this Q&A, and that honor goes to James. James, thank you for your patience. Thanks for waiting on hold. Go ahead with your question, please.
Yes, Representative Spanberger, thank you very much for this forum. And my question is on the infrastructure bill. I know it includes funds for roads and bridges, and I assume dams, but there are any funds in there for improvements in railroads? If it was economically feasible, we could transport goods and maybe improve the passenger service. I know many countries around the world are ahead of us in that regard, and I just want to know if there are any funds set aside for those improvements. I love to travel by railroad. I think it's a great way to get around, and I was hoping that the bill would include some funds in that, but I don't know if it does or not. Can you answer that?
It does. James, it does. And I love to travel by rail as well. I'm very lucky that when I travel back and forth to DC, not every week, but sometimes I do have the ability to just relax on a train, get some work done, and arrive on Capitol Hill. But yes, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act has support, has financial investments in roads, bridges, waterways, ports, electrical grid infrastructure, and yes, railroads and other public transportation as well. For anyone who might take the VRE or the Metro, once you kind of head north, there's investments that will be applicable to those forms of transportation. Certainly, my colleagues, Congressman Connolly, Byer, and Congresswoman Wexton are excited about some of the investments related to Metro. But for anybody who likes to take a train through the Northeast Corridor or anywhere else in the country, yes, there's substantial support to both passenger rail and transportation. So when we're talking some of the challenges we have in the supply chain, certainly investments in our rail as the means of shipping goods is also another element that a little bit of a longer term investment, but certainly oriented towards supply chain remedy.
So, Congresswoman, as I just mentioned, we do need to begin to wrap up this call. So I'd like to call on you for some closing remarks, please.
Thank you so much. Well, I just want to say thank you to everyone who called in today. I think we talked about a variety of different important issues: border security, computer security, broadband, postal service, supply chain, prescription drugs, banning lawmakers from buying or selling individual stocks, grant programs, their value, the incredible work of our local law enforcement and some of the grant programs I've been working on related to them, the child tax credit, answering your questions, and certainly recovery and criminal justice related issues for our returning citizens. So I hope we were able to answer most of your questions. Certainly, if you have any additional questions, I welcome you to be in touch with my office. We'd love to make sure that you have all of the answers that you need. And as always, if we can help you as you are trying to navigate a federal agency, Social Security, the VA, Medicare, State Department, a passport issue, Postal Service, please be in touch with our office. We have an incredible team of individuals who are focused on ensuring that we can help you as you try to navigate the system. We can't solve all the problems, but we can certainly assist you as you go through the process and ideally ensure that you're getting the support and the help that you need. So to all the constituents on the line, thank you so much for the honor of representing you. Thank you for calling in with your questions. And I, again, once again, appreciate the opportunity to be accountable to you all and to answer your questions. I wish you all a very, very warm evening. We might be getting some weather tomorrow, so please be safe if you're on the roads. And again, thank you for joining us tonight.
As mentioned, we're coming to the end of our live event this evening. Thank you for taking the time to join us for this important Virginia